why B2B sales training alone won't help you grow. Oh, we've got more. Picture yourself, if you will, walking along a riverbank, and there are some people fishing, okay? There are 8, 9, 10 people on the fisher bank. They're always men for some reason. I don't know why, but so we'll call them fishermen, okay? And these guys are all fishing in the same part of the stream. Only one of them has any fish. Everybody else has got nothing. Now, you might reasonably ask why, okay? First thing, we need to take a slight detour into what fly fishing is, because if you don't know, fly fishing has this weird technique of casting. So you can see this guy, what he's doing is shaking this rod back and forth, and this line is getting longer and longer and longer, and your goal is to keep it in the air, not kill anybody, not hook any trees. And then at some point, this came from a famous film in the 1980s, at some point, he will cast it, and the weight on the end of the line with the fly will drop in exactly the right part of the stream, and hopefully your fish is going to go, that's just what I want to eat, wham, and is faked out by the fact that it's not a real fly. Now, so let's then look at why they're successful. Why this one person is successful. 3 major things, right? First of all, why is the fish going to go for that fly? That's pretty obvious, they're hungry. Yeah? Second one is the technique, casting technique. You've got to have that casting technique. If you don't have a casting technique, you won't get anywhere. But the thing that makes the difference, because you're standing there and you're watching these guys, and they've all got good casting technique, it seems to you, with the untrained eye. So what's the difference? Here's the difference. It turns out that where you're going to cast in the stream, the fly that you have, because fly fishermen spend hours tying these little things that look like fly larvae, different flies, different stage of maturity, blah, 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 and they'll have boxes of them. And so choosing which fly is a function of the fish. It can change as a function of the temperature. It can change as a function of the season, whether it's rainy, whether it's cloudy, time of day, whatever. So the reason that the guy that's caught all the fish is not to do with the why or the technique. It's the how the fish is acting. Okay? Now, you didn't come here to listen to me talk about fly fishing. So let's bring this into B2B, because I think we can use the same characterization to understand why in B2B, if you guys are in B2B, you will understand that most of the time in most B2B companies, we don't actually know what's going on with our customers. We run a funnel set of sales, because when we start engaging with one company, it looks just like the one we engaged with a month ago, and that sale closed in 3 months, and this one's going on for 18 months and we don't know why. Let's have a look at this then. Oops, I've gone the wrong way. Let me just do this again. So, the first thing is the why. Obviously, you have to know why your customer buys your product, right? And if you're in B2B, if you don't know that, then you've got a problem that I'm not going to help you solve here, okay? You have to know why your customer's going to buy. The second thing, the technique, the equivalent of the casting is your sales process, your sales capability. And that's where the sales training will come in. You've either hired salespeople who have got sales capability, you've got a process built in, blah, blah, blah. One assumes that's all done. But the issue is, in B2B, we don't know how customers act. And therefore, if you take it back to the fly fishing analogy, doing more lead gen without knowing how your customer's going to act is simply just casting more flies into the stream. You might catch the odd fish, but you won't get the linear improvement that you expect. And in my experience, and I've been in B2B all my life, you just see this all the time in pretty much every B2B company. So, now here's the thing. It turns out that you can categorize and understand how your customers act, right? Now, a lot of people will say, shit, Mark, they're all different. How can I know how they're going to act? Well, it turns out you can categorize them, and you can categorize them in 2 ways. One we call buying styles, and the buying style is, it's the characteristics of how the people in your target customer company act when engaging, okay? Now, the second thing is what we call the buying process, and this is the process of decisions and actions that occur within a company in order for that company to buy something, all right? Now, I'm going to go through those into a little bit of detail, but here's an important point. This is based on how the customer perceives the value of your product and service, which begs the question, what's value? in a B2B sense, value is, if I buy your product, how will it help me increase my sales? Now, that might be a thread you have to pull, but eventually it has to either increase my sales or it's got to decrease my cost, or possibly both. And the third one is, there isn't a third one. Okay? Now, I'm hoping that all B2B people know this. That's pretty basic, okay? The key thing is that no B2B purchase should ever happen unless your customer can see that that will be the case with your product, right? So let's assume that's true. Now let's move forward onto understanding what the buying styles are. Now, this is, as I said, this is how your customers understand the value of what it is you're selling to them before you engage with them. And there are three: value offered, value added, value created. I'm going to go into each one and you'll understand them, you'll recognize them, okay? Couple of things to say. Firstly, there is no hierarchy. There's no one that's better than another. They're just different. Secondly, you as the vendor don't get to choose. You have to align with the buying style that your customer is actually in. And the question is, how do you find that out? Okay? So, let's go into them. Value offered. This is the customer who's in a value offered buying style. They understand their problem or opportunity that your product or service gives them. They know it. They understand that. You don't have to tell them. They understand the value of doing it, and they know the product or service that they want. Now, the classic example in a business sense is a laptop, right? We know the problem it solves. We know the opportunity it gives us. We know that the value is. We know, if you talk to your IT people, you know what kind of laptop you want. So you know it, okay? So that's a classic value offered buying style. One other thing I'd say about buying styles, don't ask your customers what they are because they won't know. This is a framework that was built by a consulting company a few years ago, but that company sold to big companies like Cisco, Airbus, and whatever else. What we did, we worked with them to digitize it. I'll talk about that in a little while. So, what does that mean? The customer, therefore, is looking for what we'll call the best deal. Now, the deal for them is some combination of features, functions, availability, perceived product quality, perceived customer service capability, perceived brand, price, and whatever else, right? So if you think about it yourself, right? If you were going to go buy something that you know what you want, you know more or less what that deal looks like for your particular company. Okay, so that's what they're looking for. And then what they want is a frictionless transaction. They want to execute that as simply and as quickly as they can. So what does that mean for you as the supplier? That means, first thing is, you have to be top of mind. Think about your laptop. If you're going to go to a laptop, you are only going to go to a company that you know of. So you have to be top of mind. So if you're a vendor and you have the best product and you aren't on that list of 4 or 5 that they're going to go and look at, you don't get the deal, regardless. So that tells you something about the marketing. It gives you some implications of things you need to be thinking about with marketing. Second thing is, you need to offer the best deal. So you need to know your marketplace well enough that you know what that deal is. And you may be surprised. In value offered, it is usually not price, which is the factor. Sometimes it is, but more often than not, it's other things. So you've got to know what that is to think about making sure you put the best deal together and protecting margins, okay? And the third thing is, obviously, you need to have the ability to offer that frictionless transaction. Now, one thing I would say is that this is what we would call inflexible. If you think about it, there's no negotiation in value offered. You don't negotiate with Dell for your laptop. It's a take it or leave it proposition, which means you've got to get this right? Because your customer is a click away. Sorry, your competitor is a click away. And they've probably got 4 or 5 that they're looking at. So if you don't, went blank here, I don't know why. Anyway, so let's look at the next one. This is value added. Now, same thing, customer understands the problem or opportunity, they understand the value as well. Here's the difference. There are different solutions that solve that problem or give them that opportunity. And they can't just build a deal because it's not that simple. So now what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to engage with different vendors and talk to those vendors and have presentations, tenders, those kind of things, and figure out which one fits them best. And therefore, this has a number of different things. First of all, the customer now is looking for the best fit. which one of these competing solutions fits my particular situation the best? What has the supplier got to do? The supplier, this is about, the big word in value added is differentiation. Why is your product or service going to be different and therefore better to fit what the customer needs? So it's about differentiation by showing your added value. Okay? Now, this buying style is completely the opposite of value offered. Because here you get to engage, right? You do tender presentations, you do webinars, you do whatever it is you do, and you will tailor your particular solution to their requirements. So it's very flexible, you get a chance to engage. Third one, value created. This is a customer that doesn't yet understand the problem or opportunity that your product or service gives them. Okay? So therefore, they don't understand what value it gives them. Therefore, they don't know what the product is, and they aren't out looking. In value offered, value added, there's a budget. There's no budget here, because they don't even know it exists. Now, in most situations with value created products, it's not that they don't know the problem exists, it's just that they deal with it as business as usual. And it's only when you go, here's the problem, that they'll engage with you, okay? So what does that imply? The customer needs problem, opportunity, and value education. Note I didn't say anything about the product. So therefore, what has the product got to do? The supplier has to educate about the problem, opportunity, educate about the value, and they are not selling in the traditional sense. Okay? Now, those three buying styles, I'm going through this really, really quickly, okay? But they imply, if you want to be successful, they imply dramatically different behavior from the supplier. And if you are not aligned, you'll find that your sales processes are they're all over the place, okay? So that's the first thing. Now, why is this important? Because it turns out you can diagnose your customers by asking this simple question. Do they understand the problem or opportunity and value of your product or service before you engage with them? And you'll know. If you think about it, sit down with your teams, you ask the question, do they know this? If the answer is yes, then they are by definition either value offered or value added, and then you can figure out which one is which as a function of the product you do, right, and how you engage. If the answer is no, they are VC. Which means how you're going to, in all of those three cases, you have to structure your business differently. Your messaging's differently, everything's different. And here's the key thing then. Buying styles tells you how, I said this earlier on, tells you how to engage with people. So the buying styles tells you your messaging. Be clear. Value offered, value added, value created. The structure within which you need to build your messaging is pretty clear. The work that you do is you take that structure and you say, how does my product or service fit into that structure? What's the messaging nuance that fits within that structure? And then that structure is what goes on your website, it goes in your presentations, it goes in your webinars, it goes everywhere. Okay? Second thing, buying process. Here's a statement. Every product, B2B product, goes through this process. Every single one. Now, hold that thought, because you're probably going to call, that's not true on me in a minute. All right? Let's just go through. This is the process. Imagine you're in a company. Any company, it doesn't it doesn't matter what it is. What does that, let's say a new idea comes in, and it comes in from a consultant, it comes from a competitor, it comes from a trade show, it doesn't matter where it comes from. Okay? So there's an idea has to come from somewhere. If that idea is going to go any further, it needs a mentor. Now, in normal business parlance, a mentor is a mentor to the person, yeah? In this case, the mentor is to the idea. You have to, it doesn't matter how great the idea is, if nobody in that company goes, that's good, we should do something with that, and takes it on and actually actions it, it won't go anywhere. Okay? Now, that mentor is going to have to burn a little bit of political capital and actually go and figure out whether they think it's a good idea for this company or not. If they do, and obviously they may not, in which case it dies, if they do, they go into the P phase, which is position. And that's where they need to find a sponsor. Now, a sponsor is more senior. A sponsor is going to have budget, they're going to have political clout. And the mentor has to sell the sponsor on the idea that this is a good thing and we ought to spend some money internally, some time internally to do a business case to figure out whether this is what we should be doing or not. And if the answer is yes, then they go into assess. And that is the internal business case stuff. Now, those of you that live in the world of tendering, that phase is where RFIs come out, requests for information. Are you familiar with those? Yeah? Where companies go, I want to know how this all works. That's where RFIs go out. If it's successful and they build the business case internally and it works, then that case will become public and it forms the basis of, in a formal situation, a tender document or an RFP, or in a less formal situation, let's go and talk to these vendors and figure out what it is we want. Okay? And then the final one is transaction. Best and final offers, negotiations, all that stuff. Now, look at that statement at the top. Hang on a minute, my company just bought a laptop. We didn't go through all of that. You're right. But 30 years ago, the company that when your first company bought a laptop 30 years ago, they absolutely did. Right? So notice I'm not saying every purchase, I'm saying every product. Because this is a maturity thing. Remember the buying styles, value offered, value added, value created? There's a maturity thing there, how mature the product is in the marketplace. This is the same. So you might not be surprised to know that one maps onto the other. But this is where it becomes really interesting because impact, this process, tells you how to engage with the company. So it defines how your customer engagement should go. Imagine if you were at M. There's no point talking about your product yet. There's no point thinking about best and final. There's none of that. You've got to do all the other bits first. You've got to you have to hold your customer by the hand and walk them through the process internally, and hopefully you'll get to T and you will get that deal. So buying styles tell you your messaging. Impact tells you the engagement and how that works. Okay? Now let's see how the two go together. You can probably, buying styles map onto this. It's probably pretty obvious that value offered is there, isn't it? Yeah, value offered, think about the laptop. I know the product, problem, opportunity, I know the value, I know the product, it's value. So that's why you're at T. Value added is really at C, can bleed a little bit into A. Remember, C is the external business case when it gets shown, this is what we want. And A is when the company's doing the internal stuff. Now, some value-added vendors can do quite well by trying to get up here a little bit. But generally, it's C. And therefore, value created is up at I or M. Because you, as the vendor, can plant that idea in their minds. But what that says is that your engagement with that customer is not a sales engagement. It's an internal positioning, politics, figuring out the numbers, blah, 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 before you even get to T. And interestingly, if this is a value created situation and the company you're dealing with, say government or some of the big organizations, if they have to go to tender, what you will find is that your company will write the tender document, basically, because you've been in there the whole time. So you will win, pretty much, unless something goes horribly wrong. Okay? Now, what does this all mean? It means that alignment is key, which means you have to be in the same buying style as your customer. You can't be in a value offered sales approach if your customer is value added, because it won't work. If you are aligned, however, you see some quite dramatic things change. The high level in sales and marketing is that you increase the efficiency and effectiveness of your sales processes, right? Because you understand what's going on now. And those of you involved in sales will be aware of red, amber, green, RAG type ideas. You want to move, if your customer's in the amber, I'm not sure, you want to move them to red or green as fast as possible. I don't care which way they go, I want it done quickly. Here you can understand that much better, and therefore your efficiency is better, and therefore you tend to see costs decrease as well, because you don't waste time. Okay? So your messaging improves, your sales engagements improve, and one thing we didn't mention, channel. Channel for VO is completely different kind of organization than it is for a VA or a VC situation. If you try and get the channel for a VC and they're a VA type channel, then it won't work. And you'll waste loads of time doing it. Trust me, I've been there, I've done it. It's a nightmare, okay? Finance ops. The high level here is improved clarity. It's a clarity thing. You get P&L decisions are much quicker. If you've got your finance people involved with your sales processes, you will be able to make decisions as to whether to go with this sales opportunity or not, because you understand where it sits and which buying style it's in and whether you can deal with it or not. Your HR decisions are more clear, because people that operate well in VO typically don't operate well in VC and vice versa. So you need different skill sets. Okay, company I used to own, we were a VC company before we understood all this. Our product was VC, it was not understood in the marketplace. We hired the top sales guy from IBM, who was, it turned out, a VA sales guy. Couldn't sell a bean. And we wasted loads of money and loads of time both for him and us. Okay? Nothing to do with him, he's great. Just didn't fit. And sorry, the other one is future visibility. So you can see, you can predict. Most B2B companies have a CRM system full of crap, they have no idea if it's going to close or not. Implement this kind of understanding and it improves dramatically. Final thing is in risk. It's lowered risk. Why? Because your strategic decisions can be better, because you can understand where should I be expanding into, et cetera, because you understand what you're buying, how you operate, and therefore where you should be going. Less indecision. I think that's important, especially for smaller businesses. A lot of us, it's hard to make decisions because I've got no framework within which to make them, so you kind of make your best guess, which is stressful. And your financial choices. If you're running a VC business or a VO business, the balance sheet you need is dramatically different. So it helps you in understanding what your financial structure should be, okay? Now, what I've given you is a very, very high level of one of the projects that Visible Pathway does. We say consulting digitized. What we do is we work with consulting companies, and we, like a guitar teacher has put their guitar lessons on the web now. So you don't go to a guitar teacher now, you go to the web. What we do is we work with consultants in the same way to build their content into digitally delivered projects with software and various other cool things in it. The aim is to get this kind of knowledge and this kind of work and this availability out to small businesses. We're focused on smaller businesses because they typically won't buy the consulting but need the help. And what I've given you there is the first little piece of one particular project that's on our platform. And that's the foundation pieces of what the project's all about. The key thing with any of this is then, what do I do? How do I put it into practice? What are the pieces of work that my business needs to do to understand my customers, to understand what buying styles they are, to understand all of the things that I need in order to be able to align with my customers. Let's give you an example, quick one. Let's say you're a one-product company and you sell into one market. It is likely that the buying style for that one market will be the same. But what if you sell into two markets? Remember we said it's a maturity thing. So what if you've been in one market and you're doing well because it's mature? So maybe you're value added or value offered because the market understands what you do. And then you go, great, well these guys over here, different market, they've got the same problem, let's go in there. The likelihood is it's going to be value created over there because they don't understand it. So if you take your existing sales model and go over there, guess what? It won't work. So what you find is when you do this analysis, you realize that actually you have this matrix of products, however many I've got, into the markets. And there's this one's VO, this one's VA, this one, or whatever it is, right? And the key then is to figure out, okay, where do I need to be focusing? Where's the most important thing for me to put my effort? How do I do it? All those kind of things. Okay. I won't speak anymore. I'd like to give you time for some questions if there are any. But it would be really nice to, if you're interested in knowing some more about this project or any of the other projects we've got, come over to us on 370. We're about that far away. And we have a coupon code, which if you are interested, runs until I think the middle of next month for 70% off any of our projects.